you're going to see, you're going to notice some things. How many of you get a chance to read the book of Esther? Did you see anything different about the book of Esther? Anybody see anything different about it? Did you notice anything about the book of Esther? All right. So when we look at Esther, that's the book that one of the only books in the Bible that you won't hear God's name mentioned. That's why we will be able to see the providence of God, for His people. Even when His name is not missing, don't mean He's not working. See, and some of the main characters in Esther, some of the background. Esther was in so many ways, she was a Jewish orphan. A Jewish orphan that was raised. Some of the, as you do research, some of the research said she was raised by her cousin. Some research said her uncle. But what I found out that she was raised by his Mordecai who is the one that we're going to talk about as well. He was the one that raised Esther, which was Mordecai. When you do the research, you're saying that Esther was Mordecai's uncle's daughter. And so then you're going to read about Haman. You'll find some things about Haman. He was one of the agnostic officials that provided over the court of Babylon. Then when you look at some of the research I found was that Esther was born around about 472 BC. But Esther wasn't really her name. Her name was Hadassah. She had a Jewish name meaning Merlin. That was her real name. And then she became the queen of the Persia and Medes. She was under the Babylonian Empire. She was one of the captivities. But when you read about Esther, there are some similarities between and Esther. Joseph in Genesis, he was sold, and he was sold, and then he became servant at one of the king's servants. But he was raised to royalty. Also, when some of the similarities with Esther, with Joseph, he saved his family. What was going on in Genesis with Joseph was there was any background on Joseph? It was a famine going on, right? There was no food going on in the land, but Joseph, he persuaded the king. Like Daniel and Nebuchadnezzar. It was a dream. The king had a dream about 7 years of famine, and when the king found out that the dream was coming true, convinced him to let him make sure that there was plenty. But then Joseph had to wind up saving his people, just like Esther. Esther was in captivity, Babylonian captivity. But she set out to do what? To save her people. Am I right? Because you had a man by the name of Haman wanted to kill all of the Jews. because Mordecai, and when you read the story, we're not going to go into it, not this week, but start reading it, and you're going to find out why Haman was had so much hatred for the Jews, you know, because some things he wanted backfired on him. He was a man that wanted to be on the scene, but it didn't happen the way he wanted it to happen. So he had to come up with a plot to get rid of the Jews. And then you had the king, and Esther had done some things that, you know, she saved her people. But when you read the story, she had done something that was not, but those, she had some faults too, let's put it that way. She had some faults because, you know, what did she do? She disguised her name, am I right? She didn't want to give up her name because she wanted to mingle with the Babylonian official. But Mordecai had, when you read about Mordecai, you'll see that he counseled Esther. And like I said, there were some main characters here that we're going to read about. You had King Ahasuerus. He was a Persian king. And if you read Ezra 4 and 6, to whom the enemies of the Jews sent representation, he started out, he was opposing rebuilding of the temple in Jerusalem. And he had another name was Zaxxus. In Daniel 9 and 1, Ahasuerus is presented as the father of Darius the Mede. And at Ahasuerus, he became the king over the Babylonians. And then another one of the main characters is Haman. He was known as Haman he was an Agagite. He was one of the main person in Esther's, in the book of Esther. He resented the Jews. He was a high official in the court of the Persian Empire. And when you read the story of Esther, you're going to find out some interesting things because, number one, we said you would not find the mention of God in the book of Esther. And you didn't see anybody praying. Like in Daniel continued to pray, didn't it? You read about Daniel, but in Esther you won't find anything about anybody praying. And not only that, it was very interesting to see that. You know, you got most all the books of the Bible talks about God. But in Esther, there was no mention in him. But that don't mean God is not working. Am I right? Right? Yeah, it don't say, you know, there are different opinions about it. But it don't mention who wrote the book of Esther. And all we know about Esther, like I said, she was a Jewish offering that was raised by her cousin, Mordecai. And who knows how she became king? Queen. King. Queen. Anybody read about it? How she became a queen in the book of Esther?
The original queen,
Vashti.
refused to come to the king.
But then, wasn't she in a contest? She was in a beauty contest. Am I right? So that's how she won that title. But uh, but there was a purpose in her becoming affiliated with the king. Not only that, when you read about Esther, you gonna see how brave she was, because she done something that no normal person could do. Do y'all know what it is?
And she knew she wasn't supposed to appear before the king before he called her.
Right. She went before the king, and during those days, that you could be killed. You know, but she had a heart for her people. You know, she was more interested in saving her people than saving her soul, her life. Yeah.
Of course, we know that famous quote, 4:14. For such a time as this, she was to go before the king, say, and be the one for such a time as.
Yeah. But see, even when you read about Esther, or even when you read about Joseph in Genesis, you know, you're going to see they are driven by something. They are driven by something, and when you look at it, and when you read Esther and you read about Joseph over in Genesis about chapter 46, you find he had a passion for who? For his people, for his family. Esther had a passion for her people. When you read about, there was a festival, and we're going to read about a festival in the book of Esther. And that festival had a specific reason for being celebrated, you know. And it wasn't just, you know, we happy and we gonna party. There was a festival given, it was a holiday that they had set aside. It was called the Festival of Purim. Am I right? Purim, am I announcing that right?
Close enough.
You're close enough? Yeah, so, but that festival had something to do with getting rid of the enemy. They had a plan to get rid of the enemy, the Jews get rid of the enemy, and then they would have a festival. Then we're going to read about the courage and faith of Esther. You know, Esther, she emphasized the courage and faith and the belief that and even though she was being challenged in different circumstances, she had a great impact. Even though she was in captivity, she had a great impact on the people. You'll see a symbol of empowerment. You know, Esther is often seen as a symbol of empowerment and standing against injustice. And she inspired many with her. When we get into studying Esther, she had an impact on a lot of people. Not only her impact gave people faith and courage, her impact made some people upset, which is one called Haman. When we study the book of Esther, we're gonna find out that there was, there was, it was intentional, you know. Some say it was intentional that the name was omitted, his name was omitted. But what do you think the main point of Esther is going to be about? If anybody read it, what is the main point that you got out of it? Well, one of the points was to show us, was save her, the Jewish people.
Satan versus God.
Satan versus God. Okay. Now, we know, and I've said that when you read Esther, you won't hear God's name mentioned. Am I right? But when you read Esther, what I got out of it, that it shows that it showed us that the hiddenness of God's word is not the absence of God. Because God's word was hidden, it don't mean he was absent. When you read about the book of Esther. Although God is not mentioned in the entire book, he sovereignly and mercifully preserved his people in the midst of adversity. So when you read about it, and like I said, Esther wasn't perfect. You know, when you look at, somebody find Leviticus 19 and 11 for me. I got it? Yeah, 1911. Read it out loud so that if I can hear it, I give you the mic.
Is it 1911?
Mm-hmm.
It says, "You shall not steal, nor deal falsely, nor lie to one another."
Mm-hmm. Said we should not do what?
Steal,
Mm-hmm.
nor deal falsely, nor lie to one another.
Mm-hmm. So she in a sense, when she concealed her name, her Jewish identity, she had broken the law, right?
That's right.
So I mean, she had great characteristics. She had a heart for her people, but she still had fault. She had fault. Did you have your hand? Oh, I thought you were sister, right? I thought you had your hand up. So but when you look at it, I say she done what she had to do to. But why did she do that?
Because during that time, Jews were frowned upon in the there. So they would, Mordecai, of course, advised her
Mm-hmm.
to keep her name secret.
Yeah.
I mean, keep her identity secret. So she would be known that she was a Jew
Mm-hmm.
because they looked down on Jews.
Right. Plus, she could navigate
Exactly.
within the court if they knew she was a Jew. So she had to disguise her name, even though she know the law said that she shouldn't do it. Like I said, she had fault, the king had fault, but she had to do what she had to do to be able to get into the court with King Ahasuerus. So,
Because she kept her
Mm-hmm. Yeah. She was used as a vessel, you know, to save the Jews, but, you know, and guess what? God used us as a vessel. Am I right? We're not perfect. And we all have fault. But we still can be a vessel that God can use. All right? Even when I looked at her symbol of empowerment, you know, she had courage. She had impact on the people, you know. And when I looked at it we compared it, like I said, we compared it with Joseph. You know, he saved his people after God raised her up to save her Jewish people. And also, when I look at this, in my mind, I came to, I don't know what y'all got this or not. It goes back in the Old Testament. When Testament was about coming on the scene, you know, and when you look at it in the Old Testament, Jesus he was raised from, and he was also raised to Rome, right? Esther came from a family of it, and she was raised to royalty. So, like I said, just because God is he's all, but just because his name is not being mentioned, you know, it don't mean he's absent. Because when you look at even in Daniel life, Daniel had a prayer. He prayed. He had a praying life. He had courage and he had faith in God. He had faith that God will bring him through. That's why he showed so much courage. Esther showed the same courage, you know, because her courage was going into the court of the king. But somewhere she had, by her parents dying and the verses and stuff, things that she went through, even in captivity, you'll find that she kept her faith and courage. Any comment? So when you look at Mordecai, I read that he was a first generation of Jews that was in captivity, and he had lived through the reigns of several Babylonian kings, and he was the cousin who raised Esther after her parents' death. She was his uncle's daughter. Mordecai was the son of Jair, and he was a Benjamite. I read that he was from the family of the Benjamin. So there was some royalty there with Mordecai. But when Haman, you know, his attitude toward the Jews, because in a sense, Mordecai had got praise that he wanted. If you look back, why do you think that Haman had a plot to get rid of the Jews? Yeah, he was mad. So in his mind, he was disrespected because he was a high official of King's Court. But things didn't work out the way he wanted, so he plotted. He plotted to get rid of the Jews. But like I said, he wanted things to go away. He was used to a lot of luxury, and when he didn't have his way, they really put some. So like I said, we got Esther, which was made queen. She was a Jewish woman that was raised by her cousin, King Ahasuerus. He was the king of the Persians. And like I said, when you look up, he was one started out. He was opposing of the rebuilding of the temple in Jerusalem. Any questions? Any more questions? When some say that God may not have been mentioned, some also say he may not, speculation that God's name was not mentioned because he was displeased with his people. But whatever happened in the end, when you read about the result of the plot, you'll find out that Haman he got what was coming to him. He started out, his plot was to destroy the Jews, but poetic justice came to him because it didn't work out like he had planned, because God had favor in Esther. And see what man might plot against us, but when God finds favor in us, even in Esther, and even in Genesis with Joseph, when God favor, when he finds favor in his people, no man can lift his hand against us and get away with it. God is always on the scene. He's always working. He made a statement that he would never leave us or forsake us, didn't he? So, in the case of Esther, you'll find out God is still working in her life, working with his people, even though they were disobedient when they went into Babylonian captivity. God didn't forget them. He didn't leave them. And we have a lot of examples in the Bible of God delivered his people. Even though when we get hard-headed, God is still working. He delivered Samson, didn't he? Samson didn't listen to nothing, but he delivered him. Even when we read about Paul. Paul was persecuting the Christians, right? But God found a great work in him. He had a zeal, he said, not according to knowledge. But God found a great work for him to do. And even when those those that were put in captivity, God had to show them that he was in control. But he never let his people down. He never left his people. He preserved his people because he was still merciful to the sovereignty toward them. Am I right? So when we start looking into the chapters of Esther, you're going to read about her courage, her faithfulness, and God's providence toward his people. You know, so don't ever give up when there's little hope. The book of Esther will show us God can use us in a mighty good way. He can use us. Any comments? So Esther is going to be a very interesting book. Now King Ahasuerus, he was under he came to king after there was a number of kings that was for him, you know, and he had a lot of experience because he was one of the Babylonian kings that had seen a lot of unrighteous kings served before him. So he knew about the Babylonian law and the hatred against the Jews. But God gave Esther the courage to kind of, I say, infiltrate, but to have an impact on him that would make him forget about the hatred. And you read about it now, you think Haman had the plot. It wasn't the king's plot. It wasn't his plot. Haman had to come up with a plot to destroy the Jews. And so what you'll find is, but he had to get the permission from the king, the Babylonian king. But he was the agnostic. Yeah, he wasn't really the troublemaker. But like I said, Esther, God had favor in her. And you will see it as we go through the chapters starting next week. You will see it. So any comments on Esther? Please start reading Esther, because we got a whole month to deal with Esther. So you can give me some feedback. I know the teachers done their homework, but we need some feedback from y'all as well. So we need your thoughts and your ideas. So, and like I said, just because God's name is not mentioned, it don't mean that he's absent. You know, we read about Nebuchadnezzar, Daniel, and he interpreted dreams, but he always consulted God in the scriptures. Am I right? But you won't see anywhere in Esther where anybody consulted with God on a decision. But as you read through Esther, you'll see God's providence working for his people. Am I right? Just read it and you'll see Esther should be interesting. because, like I said, I hadn't noticed until I started reading it either, and that it was nothing said about God. And when you start doing research, you'll come up with a lot of different opinions. But what we try to do is try to you get more than one opinion on a subject. I remember in Esther you find out that Mordecai, Esther was the Mordecai's cousin, but as we read back into Daniel, just because he called a person father, it didn't make them your father. Because there's some areas had a custom, am I right, of calling people fathers, which wasn't their father. So that's why you have to do word research, But in this particular instance, as I looked at, studied it, you find out if Esther was Mordecai's uncle's daughter, what do they make her? Cousin. But I seen some authors say that he was her uncle. Yeah, but if that's if Mordecai's uncle's daughter, that makes her his cousin. So study the book of Esther, and we and be able to give me some feedback, okay? All right, that's all I have right now. We'll pray with Father. We thank you for giving us an opportunity to look at the book of Esther, and we pray as we go through the book of Esther, they will remind us and help us to remember God have worked in our lives, Father, that his providence have shown us that he watches over his people, he takes care of his people. And Father, we pray that as we leave this building, but never from you, that you'll protect us and bring us back again at the next appointed time. If it be not against your will, as this prayer and all prayer in the name of your precious